Hi, this is Mr. Gonzalez, and today we are going to start learning about World War One. Today we're going to focus on the causes and the beginning of the war. So let's jump right in. Before we start talking about World War One, let's talk about Europe in 1914. So why are we doing this? First, World War One was fought primarily in Europe, and 1914 is the year that the war started. So I want to kind of give a layout of the land of what the world was like on the eve of World War One. That way, it can set the context. So it is very important to note that industrialization had made European powers and their offshoots in places like the United States very powerful relative to the rest of the world. So you might recall industrialization was the process by which machines started to replace human labor, and this unleashed all sorts of technology, steam engines, eventually internal combustion engines. This technology seeped into many sectors, including the military, the type of artillery they had, the type of weapons that these modern militaries had. And this new military strength that is built on top of economic strength unleashed by the Industrial Revolution, all this made Europe and its offshoots powerful in relative position to the rest of the world. Now, these European powers had become so big and so powerful that they controlled over 80% of the Earth's landmass on the eve of World War One. Now, we talked about imperialism a few weeks ago, and we know that imperialism was at times direct and at times indirect. Indirect meaning that European powers were controlling their empires through local intermediaries. But nonetheless, directly or indirectly, European powers hold a lot of control over the Earth's landmass, a lot of influence over the Earth's landmass. Now, the thing about World War One is that it was surprising on the one hand and yet not surprising. A lot of people expected war, but if you look at the previous century in European history, Europe had actually had a period of somewhat stable history, stable in terms of warfare. So Europeans had for a long time been fighting each other, the 30 Years' War and the 7 Years' War and the Napoleonic Wars. But after the Napoleonic Wars, you had a period of relative peace in Europe. That is not to say that there were no wars at all. You had the Crimean War, you have the Franco Prussian War, you have other conflicts, but there was nothing on this big, wide continental scale. And so that is very important to know. Europeans had kind of forgotten just how horrible a continental war could be. And it's also important to know that Europe was infused with a sense of optimism. There had been a lot of progress made in the previous 100 years. The Industrial Revolution, yes, there were some growing pains. Working conditions sucked for a lot of people, but there was optimism. There's a lot of new technology. Things were getting better. People were living longer, and so there's a sense that the Industrial Revolution and science were tools for good. And so, a place like Paris is an example of why people felt that the Industrial Revolution could be a force for good. So, Paris used to be like many European capitals, another remnant of these old, ugly medieval cities that were dirty and cramped and not very pretty. But then Paris actually went under some very serious renovations from Baron Haussmann. They widened the avenues. They built a bunch of new buildings to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the French Revolution. They built the Eiffel Tower. So Paris became this jewel of a city. And again, going into World War One, many people felt that you have reasons for optimism. Things were getting better. And so in this map, you see how European empires controlled much of the world. You see that in Europe, it is basically carved as a jigsaw puzzle. And we learned about this with the scramble of Africa a few weeks ago. You see how you have some big continental sized countries like Russia or the United States. And so this meant that Europeans had a lot of power. But let's talk about why this all unravels. Why does it come apart? Why do Europeans go to war and basically end up self sabotaging? So, one major cause is the alliance system. And to put it in very simple terms, the alliance system was this: I got your back if you got mine. Hey, if someone fights you, I hop in and I defend you. Someone fights me, you come in and you defend me. And so basically, you have this alliance system. On the one hand, you have a triple alliance. You have Germany, Austria-Hungary, and they're saying, hey, I got your back if you got mine. On the other hand, you have the Triple Entente, France, Russia. They're saying, hey, we got each other's back. Great Britain, they kind of have an agreement with Belgium saying that they want to defend Belgium's neutrality. Russia, they told their Slavic allies in Serbia, hey, we got your back if you got mine. And so this scenario basically means that a local war between just two parties can very quickly get a lot bigger, right? If everybody's going to jump in because they have each other's back, then that means that a local war can go global very quickly. And that's actually exactly what ends up happening. And so here in this map, you get a good sense of the alliance system. So as the war starts, this is kind of the arrangement. You have Team Green versus Team Brown, as you can see here. And really, the war starts right here between Serbia and Austria-Hungary. But Russia said, hey, Serbia, I have your back. Germany said, hey, Austria, I have your back. Well, now that Austria declared war in here, Russia starts to mobilize. France says, hold up, Russia, I got your back. Germany says, okay, hold up, Austria, I got your back. Germany says, oh, wait, we don't want to get surrounded, so we'll try to knock out France, so we'll go through Belgium. The United Kingdom says, wait a minute, you can't do that. And then, boom, you have World War I. Things escalate very quickly thanks to the alliance system. Something else to mention is nationalism. So nationalism is basically a sense of pride in your country. That can be a good thing. It can also lead to bad things when people feel that their pride comes at the expense of hating on others. Now, one thing that is common in Europe that maybe us Americans have a hard time relating to is the degree to which the borders between countries and empires are very fluid and multi-ethnic. And so you basically have a scenario, for example, in Alsace-Lorraine, this border region between France and Germany, where it's mixed. There are French speakers in there. There are German speakers in there. It's not like a clear line. And France is saying, hey, we believe that territory should be French. And Germany is saying, we believe that territory should be German. And so it creates misunderstandings. It creates tensions. And so nationalism in a place like Europe with a deep history where people make claims on land because they say, oh, my ancestors lived there thousands of years ago, it should be ours. It just sort of creates even more tension. So nationalism was a big factor. Germany is trying to improve itself. Britain, they have a large navy. They're proud of their empire. France, they're still bitter over the Franco-Prussian War because they lost territory to Germany. They lost Alsace-Lorraine. And then the Balkans, they have their own mission for nationhood. A lot of these micro nationalities, the Serbs and the Croats, some people want a larger South Slavic country like Yugoslavia. Some people want their own individual countries. But all this simply adds more dynamite. And so here you have a painting kind of demonstrating German nationalism at the time. So if we describe the nationalism and the alliance system as dynamite, as the dynamite inside an explosive, inside of a bomb, then now we need to talk about the fuse and the spark that lighted the fuse. And so that's what this is right here. So what was the fuse? What kind of blew things up? It was the assassination of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand. And this happened on June 28th, 1914. So basically, the Archduke was the guy that was supposed to become the next emperor of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. And he was visiting Sarajevo with his wife, and a young assassin, who was a Yugoslav nationalist, killed him. He was assassinated. Now, obviously, this is outrageous, right? The heir apparent got assassinated. His pregnant wife was also a victim. And so Austria-Hungary is very mad. And they feel emboldened because Germany is saying, we got your back, Austria-Hungary. Don't let them punk you. You got to stand up for yourself. So Austria-Hungary says, all right. Well, Serbia, we're going to set all these conditions that you're going to deny. And then we're going to use this as an excuse for war against you. But then Serbia says, okay, well, Russia's got our back. And so Long story short, war breaks out between Austria and Serbia, and this basically is the first major domino to fall. And so in this painting, you see the young Gavrilo Princip. He assassinates the Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife, Sofia, and this is the spark that lights the fuse, which blows up into World War One. This is Gavrilo Princip. He is the young man, the assassin. He was in his late teens when he committed his crime, and he ended up dying in a prison. As you can imagine, he was not treated very well in prison. And he's still somewhat romanticized by some nationalists in that part of the world to this day. So here you can see a mural with graffiti honoring Gavrilo Princip. So this is when the alliances kick in. So war breaks out between Austria and Serbia, and boom, the dominoes start to fall very, very quickly. So, as I said, Austria-Hungary and Serbia, they're going to fight. Russia steps in and says, Serbia, we have your back. France steps in and says, Russia, well, we had a deal. We have your back. Germany says, uh-oh, well, we got Russia on one side, France on the other. We don't want to be surrounded. And so Germany makes the gutsy call of saying, it'd be very nice if we can knock out France from the war early on. That way we can then focus on Russia because Russia is a big country. And so Germany says, all right, we're going to try to knock out France within 1 month. They had a plan. They called it the Schlieffen Plan. Now, Germany said it'd be very convenient if we can go through Belgium, this small country kind of tucked in between the English Channel on one side and then France and Germany on the other. And so Germany decides, let's just take a shortcut. Let's go through Belgium. That way we can kind of sweep down over Paris. Boom, knock out France in a month. But the problem was Britain was not happy about Germany basically mistreating Belgium. And then Britain decides to jump in. And so here you have some propaganda, right? You have Austrian and German troops. They speak the same language. They're friends. They're allies. Here you have the French and the British saying, united we stand, vive l'entente. This is kind of strange. Remember, Britain and France used to be rivals for the longest time. Now, let's talk about some of the initial expectations of the war. People foolishly thought that the war would be over by Christmas. So the fighting breaks out in August of 1914, and they figured by December, they're going to be home. This, as we're going to find out next week, was not going to be the case. Now, many countries kind of welcomed the prospect of war. They said, oh, okay, well, it can maybe help release some of the pressure from labor unrest. Instead of people striking in the factories, they can go off to war and feel good about themselves. And young men felt, hey, this is an opportunity to prove myself, to show I'm brave. People still had somewhat of a romantic view of war. And by romantic, I mean, like, they still viewed war as something perhaps heroic. The stuff that makes legends out of people, where you can prove your valor and your worth. The problem is, this is a modern war. People didn't have a lot of experience with modern wars. There had been some, like the American Civil War, and that should have sounded off the alarm bells. But people thought that, hey, with my bravery, I'll be able to go out there and become a legend. But it doesn't matter how brave you are. If you are running across an open field, you can be going up against the biggest wimp ever. But if that wimp is in a machine gun nest and he has a machine gun and is spraying bullets all over the place, it doesn't matter, right? Bravery and chivalry, it doesn't matter in this scenario. And so here you have some young men going off to war. They seem jubilant and happy. However, this would end up being a very long war, a very costly war. I want to go back one more time to the map. The map explains it very well. Long story short, fighting breaks out between Austria and Serbia. Then the alliances kick in. Germany says to Austria, we have your back. Russia says to Serbia, we have your back. France says to Russia, we have your back. Germany says, oh no, we don't want to be fighting on two sides, so let's knock off France. Germany also says, hey, wouldn't it be convenient to go through Belgium and then sweep down into Paris, which is over in this area? So they do that. Germany goes through Belgium, and then the United Kingdom says, no, you can't do that to Belgium. Now we're going to jump in to defend Belgium, and while we're at it, we'll defend the French and the Russians. And so, boom, a squabble between these two becomes this big, massive fight. Anyways, thanks for tuning in. See you next time. Bye.